Yep. Lovely. All right. Thank you for bearing with us as we had some issues with the live stream. I'm going to go around to introductions, starting with Councillor Schwab-Verdier.
Good evening again. I'm Councillor Florian Schwab-Verdier, Cabinet Member for Public Realm.
Hello, Councillor Francis Ume, Cabinet Member for Housing and Homelessness.
Good evening, Councillor Rowan Ree, Cabinet Member for Finance and Reform.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Councillor Wesley Harcourt, Cabinet Member for Climate Change and Ecology.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Councillor Rebecca Harvey, Cabinet Member for Social Inclusion and Community Safety.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Zarar Kim, Councillor, and I was Cabinet Member for Enterprise and Skills.
Wearing a great shirt, but also joined by our Monitoring Officer, Grant Degg, and Chief Executive, Sharon Lee, and members of the opposition. Would you like to introduce yourselves as well?
Yes. As usual, it's Councillor Orford, but I'm joined today by my leader.
Councillor Jose Fonse, Leader of the Opposition. Si.
Very cordial. Thank you very much. We have got apologies from Councillor Kwan and Councillor Jones. Are there any declarations of interest? Great, lovely. Are the minutes of the previous meeting agreed?
Agreed.
Lovely. Oh.
On the item on retrofit, which is a joint Cabinet report by Councillor Ume and myself, I did make some comments about it, which are not recorded.
Right, we'll note that then. Thank you very much. Okay, item 4, consideration of petition parking permit charges. The process for dealing with petitions is as follows. The nominated speaker may address the meeting for a period of 5 minutes. Cabinet members may then ask questions for up to 10 minutes. And officers of the council may comment on the subject of the petition. Cabinet can then debate the subject of the petition for up to 30 minutes. I think we're going to be joined by you, Mr. Holloway. Hello. Please do come and take a seat. Thank you. Do take a minute to get started, and then you've got up to 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Personally, I supported Stefan's petition because I was ignored regarding my concerns that the new permit prices create barriers to work for those needing essential work vehicles. And I believe this will also drive up welfare costs and costs for services for residents. From my own experience, I believe barriers like these would have stopped me starting out on my own, building a business and creating jobs for others in the community. However, my job today is to try and park my own views. And represent as many residents from Stefan's petition as possible. Yet last time I sat here, it was on a subject that I'd be considered an expert on, and despite that, the support of other industry professionals and evidence that more residents opposed the council's plans and supported it, sadly, we achieved no change. So today, please may I just ask questions that will help residents understand the justification for the parking charges, to help us understand who's representing our views, and to help us understand how these views can be better and more honestly heard and acted upon in the future. Firstly, and in the interest of time, please be quick if you're willing to take part. Hands up if you have a vehicle.
Forgive me, I'm not familiar with the format because this is my first time doing it, but I don't think it's an interactive at this point. I think it's a speech and then we will answer.
I'm going to ask the questions because that's what I prepared, but obviously if you want to put your hands up, great. If not.
Is that the normal protocol? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
apologies.
It's up to you. So hands up if you have a vehicle. Hands up if you feel you need a vehicle for family or mobility reasons that don't qualify for a blue badge. Hands up if you run a small business here. Hands up if you use an essential work vehicle. Hands up if you would prefer to see no vehicles in our borough. Hands up if you see your role as listening to residents above your own views, or hands down if once being elected, you feel your role is more doing what you believe is best for residents without the need for further input. Hands up if you agree that a consultation is only meaningful if the right people know about it. If you do agree, then why, for example, were permit holders only notified via the West London Gazette? If the council does want to hear residents' opinions and is genuinely open to being influenced by them, hands up if you agree that using leading questions will justify a pre-planned outcome rather than reflect residents' true opinions. If you agree leading questions are not helpful, then can you explain the reasoning for phrasing questions such as parking charges should be used to reduce the number of higher polluting vehicles instead of something which gives residents enough information like a 120% increase in charges plus 50% for diesels plus 50% for a second vehicle should be used to reduce the number of higher polluting vehicles. Yet despite the leading question, the question still only got 49.18% support. So if LBHF doesn't treat consultation as votes and thus side with the majority, then hands up who feels that in the scenarios like this, there's a risk that LBHF is not living up to its motto of doing things with residents, not to them. Hands up if you agree that a petition system to respond to this kind of thing is only fair if residents can easily sign and share it and thus are free from faults when doing so. And if LBHF wants to do things with residents, not to them, then hands up if you feel 5,000 signatures representing 20% of the voting constituents is an unrealistic criteria for residents to be able to win a full council debate. I sent evidence showing electric vehicles cost around £3,524 more per year. So if the goal is cleaner air, hands up who thinks we need to be doing more to make EVs financially viable. The Net Zero report values a parking space at £4,300, and according to the Greater London Authority, gross residential yields are 3 to 4%. So why then are permit prices not in the range of £129 to £172 per year? The report also acknowledged that these permit costs will have a more significant impact on lower income households and likewise less profitable smaller businesses. Therefore, hands up who feels discounts for lower income households and young families and essential work vehicles might be worth considering. In summary, you no doubt became councillors with a great intention of advocating positive change. When you do well, then like being a parent, you probably don't get the validation you deserve. For that, I am truly, truly sorry. However, right now, please can you help residents know, how can we make sure enough people know about consultations? How can we get rid of leading questions in consultations? How can we make sure the majority is sided with? How can we make petitions easier to sign and share and the thresholds realistic? How can we genuinely influence you? I believe your residents are thus asking for easy and honest engagement, to be helped to be greener by making it more affordable. I understand that they want green policies that do not control their freedom of movement and disproportionately punish small local businesses and lower income families. An example might be spending some of that £32 million surplus on at-home charges so new EV users could benefit from cheaper energy. Therefore, hands up who will commit today to doing things with residents, not to them, by reviewing these permit charges, by finding a more honest and more effective approach to engaging with residents, and via introducing more positive rather than punitive green measures. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms Holloway, for taking the time today. I'm going to hand the chair back to Councillor Cowan, the Leader of the Council.
Thank you, Mr. Holloway, and I apologise for my lateness. And I caught the vast majority of what you were saying and will watch the beginning of it on YouTube. So thank you for putting that together. Can I start by asking the Cabinet, are there any questions for Mr. Holloway? Okay, so I will start just a few questions. So your premise that the environmental aspect of the parking charges and the size of the parking charges rise, which is what's written into your petition. Can you enlarge on that, please?
I think there is little disagreement to have parking permit charges. I think there's little disagreement to have parking bans based on emissions. I think the balance of the question is how much should that be? And I think that has maybe disproportionately affected lower income families. I think it's creating barriers to entry into the workforce. And I think that the consultation period, the consultation itself was not widely enough publicised and did not ask questions that allowed you to get the true honest response from residents. So, for example, you know, who agrees that you should use ban-based to reduce emissions? I would say that should have been 99%. The question is how much and who's affected and how do you do this?
Yeah, these are very good points, and I can promise you we spent ages thrashing over them. What would you have done differently?
I would have asked specific questions in the consultation. For example, the one which I mentioned, which is, you know, do you support 120% increase? Do you support 50% on diesels? You maybe ask the residents, okay, what band would influence you to be more green or to get rid of your vehicle? Is it £50, £100, £200, £1,000? And I appreciate not everyone's going to ask that honestly, but also it's not an honest question if you go, openly, do you want to use pricing bands to, to challenge them, to help influence your decisions? So at the moment, I think people didn't know about the consultation. Like the West London Gazette, I appreciate that ticks the box for the Road Traffic Act, but come on, who reads that? We need to be, the council has, right, every single permit holder's email address and address. How about sending the consultation to them, ensuring the questions aren't leading their specific, get a true, honest response from them, and then create bands which appear more balanced.
And if you, assuming, putting the consultation to one side, which I know is a big part of your petition, but just looking again at the parking charges, and you've obviously done your research, which I have huge respect for, what would you do differently with the parking charges?
I think they need to, as I say, I think we need to look at how lower income families could be helped, particularly young families. I think that's the one which is coming up on next door the most. People with essential work vehicles, because there's no choice. It's not like, okay, well, I could not use my vehicle because it's now this much. They've got no choice. And if I give the situation of £3,524 more for an electric vehicle, that's not a choice. When you're asked whether you want to spend £2 more on a green vehicle when the Ocado shop comes, that's a choice. But who's got £3,524? And this is based on a 25-year-old tradesperson living in Hammersmith and Fulham.
Does any of those examples, how has it affected you?
This would have affected me 10 years ago. So my drive to be here today is to represent who I was, and those people who maybe don't have the confidence to come and speak, etc.
So what would you ask us to do?
I would ask to review those permit charges and look for a more balanced cost to them, which take into account particularly families, lower income families with young children and essential work vehicles. And I would look to see, there is a surplus, right? And there's going to be a bigger surplus because of the higher price bands. I would look to see how we can use that money to create more positive green changes. And just, obviously this isn't my area of expertise, but one example was, if it costs, one of the reasons the electric vehicles are so expensive for people is actually it's not cheaper to charge them when they're using on-street chargers.
Yeah. And
it costs about £1,700 to install one. However, it is a lot cheaper if they do manage to use in-home chargers. So maybe you want to start using as a positive green measure, help people get those in-home chargers.
No,
an idea.
These are good points, and you may know we have more electric car charging than anywhere else in Britain.
Which is,
and
the infrastructure is great.
Let me just come back, and I'll promise you I'll bring you back in. But we made a rush in when we got into office. We asked for green charge. There wasn't any electric charging bays anywhere, and we asked for some. They said we can give you 3, and we asked for 1,000. So we got to 1,000 quite quickly, and now we've got to the most of the UK. But there is a challenge there that we think they're too expensive. So we are looking at how we bring the costs down, because it is punitive if, in many ways. But the challenge with electric cars per se is we kept them free for a long time to try and incentivize people. And then we backed up the incentive by saying, we'll make it easy for you to charge if you don't have your own driveway, which many people don't in inner London. But then, as you rightly say, the costs are still quite high, and that's the next thing we're looking at. And our officials are working on that now as a means of finding a way of democratizing the offer, and that combines with market forces pushing electric car charging down. But I accept the point you make. I mean, the challenge for us as a highways authority, if you drive around anywhere in Britain, you'll see potholes everywhere, and you'll get flat tires. I got one driving through Gloucestershire not too long ago. And we don't have many in Hammersmith and Fulham because of all the money that is raised from these things. It's not the reason we do it, but all the money that is raised goes into highways maintenance, and electric cars use the road just like everybody else. So we introduced a charge for electric cars because it was about time after 10 years. But you make some very good points about it, and we'll definitely follow that up. Just on other cars, like, large diesel cars and things like that. I mean, is that something that you think we've got that wrong?
When you say large diesel cars, do you mean ULEZ diesels? because I think there are very different emissions
Yeah.
band. So, for example, with the 25-year-old tradesperson, I did a ChatGPT test on all these charges, and then I did my own one using the same data. And when you go into it to try and find the cheapest EV, there was one available on Auto Trader, and 89 ULEZ diesels. There wasn't even the choice there really for this 25-year-old hypothetical person. So I think we're in a situation where we're trying to push people to do something which isn't really a choice at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. And so in terms of our approach to diesel cars, would you recommend anything different there?
I think ULEZ diesels is what everyone asked for, everyone was told. I think it's too soon to be going on that. Okay, people are on 4-year leases, or they need to buy them off over 4 years. There isn't enough second-hand EVs on the market for people to come in on. So I think ULEZ diesels actually, we're getting too quick there. But other diesels, I think, will be on that, because it's been a long time since people said, right, you need to now move to ULEZ. So I think that's the right structure. Now ULEZ diesels are perfectly available on the market, but EVs are not yet.
Right. Is there, I mean, I'm always keen to get as much out. Is there anything else you'd want to say to us?
I think the key thing is, and I think that's one of the other kind of key points that I said, is how do we effectively influence you? And I really do, when I read these consultations, I can't say what I want to say. The questions really do to me seem leading, and that's what people are saying. You know, in those consultations, we want specifics. What are the plans? Can we genuinely influence you through those, or are the decisions being predetermined? Can we, if it is going to be, we intend to do this, have that question as a consultation. It's a bit like me going, hands up if you think that, we need more bumblebees in the thing. Everyone go, yeah, great, we need that. Okay, so then you go and decide that you're going to go and put a beehive in everyone's bedroom. Like that, we didn't agree to that, So the questions need to be more specific about what it is that is intended.
These are interesting points. I mean, I'll come back to you. Before I do that, I'm going to bring the opposition and see if they have any questions. So I will come back to you. Do you have any questions? And welcome, Councillor Alfonso, as the new leader. It's the first time we've seen you here at the meeting, so it's nice to see you. And welcome back, Councillor Alford, you're always here, and we're always grateful for your scrutiny.
Always will be too.
Councillor Alfonso.
Thank you very much, Tom. I thought that was excuse me, a very well presented.
Sorry, Councillor Alfonso. I know you haven't been here before. Your job is to ask me questions.
And thank you, petitioner.
So your job is to go through the chair, ask me questions, and then we will answer them.
I have been here before. I do understand that, and I am just thanking the petitioner who's taken time to come here and present this evening. Thank you very much. The petition that the residents have put forward is actually immensely sensible. The one thing they haven't flagged, sorry, Tom, is the fact that there is a recommendation to reduce the parking charge increase in line with inflation to an average of £167 from what was in 2012, 119. I think that is an eminently sensible compromise, which, if the administration was willing to do, would show a real positive direction of travel. Now, Tom has clearly highlighted why this petition has been put together. People who are starting out their own businesses, the vulnerable, the elderly, people who require a car to get around and probably don't have that much spare capital. So tonight you do have an opportunity to accept their petition, which is very reasonable. It is a compromise. And my question to you is, will you accept their petition?
Do you have any other questions? Okay. What we tend to do is take every petitioner very seriously. If someone's put together a petition, then they've given it a great deal of thought. And I'm very grateful for Mr. Holloway's extremely thoughtful approach and considered advice that he's given us. I will come back to what we'll do next in a minute. Do you have any questions, Councillor Alford? Okay. Excellent. All right. So Councillor Alfonso has just said, I'll address to everybody. Councillor Alfonso has just said the price was £119 in 2012, and he's exactly right. The problem is the price was also £119 last year. And I think we made a mistake in deciding to freeze to freeze the parking charges. We should have put them up by inflation every year and made adjustments as the environmental agenda changed, because I think it was quite a difference for people when they came in, and I think it looked like we'd hiked them up a lot. We were very aware that all oppositions tend to think, as I was the leader of the opposition, think a lot about the things they do when they see an administration get something wrong they perceived. And we'd seen the former administration put charges up a lot in parking on several occasions, and we made hay on it. And so it meant that we wrongly thought the best thing we can do is freeze it. But nothing else was frozen. Traffic rates continued. People got bigger cars. The new supercar emerged with what you see as these giant diesels now. Became very fashionable to have, Porsches when I was young were quite small cars. They became these, they became the size of tractors. And a lot more of them began to appear, and it created a variety of different problems. And so we made the decision last September to take a series of actions on the pricing. Now, we spent a lot of time looking at those different prices, and we may have got some things wrong. It's very hard to work out, if we do this, what will that do with this type of category of car? Can we encourage this? We're very interested in low-income families, for obvious reasons. And we're also interested in cleaning the air, which is a contentious issue of political disagreement. And so these were the conversations that we had, and we came up with that formula. And so that's what we've come up with. We always look at things again. And I will certainly go away and consider some of your comments and talk to my colleagues in the Cabinet about that. And I can give you that assurance. In terms of consultations, I think you make a sort of, an insightful point. I can assure you the consultation was not to try and get this through. The consultation was try to engage. But as you see, it's increasingly a challenge to get people to engage in civic or indeed national public life, whether it's in becoming active or whether it's filling in consultations. And that does make it very, very challenging. And what you have to do when you're doing a consultation is stick to very clear national legislation. And so that's normally the criteria we go. I didn't see the questions before they went out, but I will take a look at them, based on what you've said. And again, I will discuss that with my Cabinet. But I assure you, we were catching up on the charges from 2012. And whilst we didn't do it to raise money, we did it to regulate the different types of traffic that comes into the area. Highway engineering is a specialist skill. Then, certainly the price that you charge to a ticket does have an influence on people and the cars that they buy. And we were quite interested in doing that. But that was not the only lever we were pulling. We were also pulling levers like putting record amounts of electric charging in. And at the moment, what we're doing is talking to providers to see if we can slash the cost on electric car charging, because there's a huge amount of variance. And we think that's the next battle, to democratize that option for people. That's where we're at. I appreciate the fact, having said it's very difficult to engage people in civic life, that you have been engaged. And so I thank you for your time and for your representations. And we will surely be in touch via the Cabinet member with you in the coming months. Thank you. Okay. Right. That takes us to, and have I got my glasses? The next item, which is, pardon? The finance peer review. Can I just have a look at the notes? Because is that where it is? Right, here we are. So next item, finance peer review. So can I ask Councillor Ree, would you just set out what findings our cross-party independent reviewers made, and what lessons we've learned from their time and effort given to our council?
Thank you very much, Leader. So yes, we're here publishing the LGA peer review of Hammersmith and Fulham Council's finance function. This was a review carried out towards the end of April by, as you say, Councillor Cowan, by a highly experienced peer review team made up of both Labour and Conservative cabinet members for finance from different areas, chaired by a current council chief executive who'd previously been a Section 151 officer, and 2 directors of finance from other local authorities. They spent a week in the council reading through our financial statements, going through our budgets, our cabinet papers, and then when they were here, they interviewed council staff, councillors from both parties, and some of the partners that we work with to deliver our services. I have to say the review itself, I was very pleased with the outcome of the review. It's highly complimentary of Hammersmith and Fulham. It says that we have a highly visible and effective political and officer leadership team. It says that the council is very ambitious and financially very well run. And it commends us on our track record and the strong focus that we have on value for money and ruthless financial efficiency, which of course is one of our values, and it leads everything we do. Finally, they were particularly impressed with the work that we're doing on the industrial strategy and entrepreneurial local government work. And they were keen that we spread the word about how we're doing this, what we're doing, and how the sector more widely can learn from our experience through our industrial strategy. They've provided 7 recommendations. These are all things that we are already working on, and we'll be presenting these in a little bit more detail on Wednesday to the Policy Oversight Board.
Excellent. Can I ask, is anybody in the Cabinet like to ask Councillor Ree about this very good report? Any questions? Okay, anyone in the opposition? Can I just, right, call Councillor Alford.
I'll try and keep this brief, but I'd like to sort of put it into segments. First of all, segments.
All right.
I did mean segments and I said segments. First of all, I would say that scrutiny at the Cabinet I find very helpful, and I think we do achieve scrutiny. So that is not aimed at the Cabinet. And I do think, particularly with Councillor Rees and Councillor Obey, when I scrutinise the HRA account, as I do regularly, again, I'm much happier about things. Where I have my concerns, and I raised it because I was part of the review, so I actually spoke, is the strength of the packs, or certainly that is where and I know Councillor Rees made a comment at the council meeting, but I don't think the scrutiny is strong enough. Particularly, we as the opposition are given enough time at PAC meetings to fully scrutinise, and that's what I was making my points about. So here, you let me, though I'm always brief, and as you know, I'm not exactly the longest speaker, so, but I do feel very strongly at PACs, I don't get long enough to be able to do things in depth as I would like to. So that is my comment.
Thank you. Councillor Ree, do you have any other questions, Evoy?
I think that we are getting much stronger on the HRA. I mean, let's face it, I can bore for England on the HRA.
It's never
So
boring.
I won't bore you all, but we do know how much and how important it is. And I do know we've made an improvement. And that I'm quite happy to recognise.
Thank you. And Councillor Alfonso?
Nothing from me. Leader, I have to be honest, I have spoken on this at full council. I will scrutinise this on Wednesday at the Policy and Accountability Board. I will reiterate the comment Councillor Alford has just made about the cheeky comment Councillor Ree made at full council, scrutiny being the role of the opposition. We do that role, but the comment question I would make is it's not just the opposition's job to scrutinise. Backbench councillors in the administration sit on these PACs. I have been to PACs recently where half of them don't bother to turn up. Some of them don't even bother to ask a question in the entire 2 hours. That is not scrutiny. That is not the role of sitting on a PAC. So my question to you is, how do you change that from your side? Because we will do our job on this side.
Well, we can come back to that, but you just told me you didn't have any questions. That's a question I think you'll find. Right, do you have any more? Okay, I'll come back to you in a second, but first, Councillor Ree.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Alford, for speaking to the peer review team, and thank you to all the members of the Cabinet, all of the officers, and all of our social partners who also spoke to the review team. I think there were a total of 40 different people who were interviewed at one point or another over the course of this week, so it really was quite an extensive exercise, and it shows just how thorough these reviews are. I think on the scrutiny point, Forgive me. I don't think I've ever been at a PAC where an opposition councillor has been stopped from asking questions because the chair didn't want them to say anything. So no, don't interrupt me. I think this point about scrutiny is, if you'll forgive me, not particularly well thought through. When we publish our budget, I go to every single PAC meeting. I go to the Policy Oversight Board. I come to Cabinet, and I come to the full council to explain the budget, to answer any questions that anybody has, and I answer those from administration councillors and from opposition councillors. There's never been a point where there has never been a point where an opposition councillor has been stopped from asking questions about the budget. That is what you said. That is what you said. You said there wasn't.
Hold on.
You
hold on.
said
Can I just? So can I just look? Let's not listen. We've always had a very clear disciplined rule here. We go for the chair. This is not a debating club, and so I will call you in a minute. And if you'd be grateful, I would let Councillor Ree finish his response.
Very much. We present financial papers regularly, not only when we're setting the budget, but we produce monitoring reports throughout the year, which all come to Cabinet and all get scrutiny from Cabinet members. And you have the opportunity to scrutinise those. And I know that you come here and you ask us questions about them and about the HRA, and we welcome that. But I think this point that you've made, that there is a lack of scrutiny, I don't recognise that, and that's not what the report says either. The comments that the report has on scrutiny are about training in particular committees where there are very technical aspects, things like the Audit Committee, things like the Pension Fund Committee, and we have been rolling out a rolling programme of training in those committees for the past year now. I'm glad that the peer review team picked up on this, and so they would like us to publish our details of this, and we'll do that. And we'll come up with a forward plan of the training that will be available. And so that's why reviews like this are so useful, because they do give us concrete things that we can take forward, and we will be taking all of these points forward.
Yeah, I'll just come back on the scrutiny thing first, just to answer your question, Councillor Alfonso. When we came into office, there were 4 scrutiny committees, call them select committees. They were very vigorously attended, because I used to attend one with Councillor Vaughan, the health and care one, and we carried out an awful lot of scrutiny. And I saw it as my role as the leader of the opposition to give rigorous scrutiny, and I think we did. In fact, I'm actually confident we did. But what we recognised was the point Mr. Holloway made, which is it's quite difficult to engage members of the public in a whole range of issues. And we wanted to wonder, how could we democratise municipal democracy at a time when it's being challenged? It's being challenged by people having just other things to do that's more interesting than turning up to meetings like this. It's being challenged by people who don't believe in democracy, like Vladimir Putin and other popularists who are getting themselves elected around the liberal democratic world. But it's also being challenged by the very nature of modernity and people not feeling, and the whole nature of the way the internet spreads conspiracy, and that will go like wildfire, and actually something doesn't always relate to facts, as we saw last summer with the riots. So there is something that getting grassroots democracy to thrive by having a rigorous engagement with the citizenry and remembering that government is of the people, for the people, by the people, reminding politicians of that as much as the public, was fundamental. So we increased the number of scrutiny panels from 4 to 7. I appreciate you weren't here then, but that was considered a radical thing to do at the time, because we wanted to give people more time, more evenings to look at more things and to find out more answers. But we also changed the select committee nature from the nature of scrutiny. So a lot of scrutiny happens after the event. And that's the nature of scrutiny, and it's the nature of looking at the way policy is made. And we were quite interested that policy often starts as an idea, either from politicians, if it's a politically led administration, or from officers if it's not, or from somewhere else. It filters into the system, and sometimes it's not scrutinised until the decision is made. And that was our experience as an opposition. And we spent some time, as all opposition should, what would we do different? And what we figured to do was to change the select committee to a policy and accountability committee, so that we could say we're thinking of doing X, Y, or Z, but we don't know yet how we'll do it. what do you think? And we started doing a series of public hearings to get people who had an interest or expert knowledge of it to give us their insights. And that was a new addition. It's worked to varying degrees of success. It very much depends on the ability of the chair to run a meeting like that, but it has worked. And I remember seeing our arts policy, our housing policy, many policies started with that process, writing to people in advance, having hundreds sometimes of people come and feed into a strategy. But again, that's not really, you know, scrutiny is about public engagement, related a bit to Mr. Holloway's point. So what we also then set up was public commissions who would carry out specialist piece of work, often led by independent experts, nearly always residents, but we'd ask them to do those things. And they would then present that to the PAC, and then the PAC would look at that. And we've carried those out largely with quite a lot of success, but not all of them have been successful. So that's extra layer of scrutiny again, because a policy is being looked at by an expert group. They're then coming to the council and saying, we think you're getting this wrong. We think you should do this differently, and we'd like you to do that. And that's worked quite well, which is why we have, I think our Independent Disabled People's Commission report was given to Prime Minister Theresa May as a sort of exemplar report. But it wasn't us, it was an independent commission, but there's been many since. So we have done that. So I think it's quite wrong to say that. You know, for a long time, I was frustrated that the opposition wouldn't turn up to any meetings, including this one, for a hell of a long time. And that's changed recently, and we're delighted that Councillor Alford is always here, and paying huge credit to her for doing that. For a long time, no one was here. In fact, I would say until 2022, given we got elected in 2014, no one came to the meetings in the opposition other than a handful of occasions in that whole period of time. So there is an obligation on the Conservative opposition to take that responsibility seriously. And sometimes people, it was exactly the same on the scrutiny committee. So I think there's always more that can be done on this front, but I think we're doing a lot more. And I would simply say, you know, we welcome all challenge, because it's better to get things fixed if we've got them wrong, before they carry on. And so that is our genuine approach to it. And we will, if you have any ideas, we would always welcome any insights you might have. But I don't think to say we have weak scrutiny is anywhere close to a truthful representation of the facts. In terms of a wider report, if I can be honest, because I can, you know, I thought you were a bit mealy-mouthed at the full council meeting, because, you know, I remember when I was leader of the opposition, you have to recognise when someone gets something right. No one, to start off with, reframe the scenario, looks at the last 15 years, starting with austerity in 2010, and thinks it's been anything but tough for local government. I know Councillor Reid joked about the fact that we had a Conservative councillor here who went to become leader in Windsor, and all of a sudden it was bankrupt. I remember doing a tour of Windsor Castle and having the person doing the tour telling me that her council tax has gone up 15%. You know, you can look at that in any way you want, but actually it's indicative that actually they weren't the only council going bankrupt. And for a while, there was a council going bankrupt every week. You know, there's still huge challenges like temporary accommodation cost. There's still huge challenges. How do you modernise a council and make it use the latest technology to deliver a more efficient set of services that are customer friendly? All of that people are struggling with across government, national, local, regional. And we've just had a report that says we're ahead of the pack. That should point that out. As a resident of Hammersmith and Fulham, everyone should be pretty pleased that an independent report says this is a remarkable set of finances you've got, with a remarkable officer team, a remarkable cabinet member for finance. I feel very lucky every time I see Rowan, you know, having a vice president of a bank as our cabinet member for finance. Most councils would die to have that. So this is a very robust report. It not only says our finances are very tight, and it's an independent cross-party report, it also then says the leadership has been very strong on upstream London, which is reshaping the nature of the economy and surfing the wave of the fourth industrial revolution. That, it says we are exemplars, and it urges the only weakness we have is not enough people know about it outside of this area. So I think if you any reasonable-minded person would clap him under the bus, they would read the report, they would pick out the challenges in it, and there are some, but they would be pretty pleased, if you're a Hammersmith and Fulham resident, to have a report that basically gives such a clean bill of health. That's what the press have reported when they've examined it, and we don't get an easy ride from the press, nor should we. you know, but that's what their view is. That's what every other person I know who's looked at it says. And I think it would be, you know, it'd be the right thing to do for the opposition to recognise that, because it is a strong report. And I pay huge credit to Councillor Ree for his leadership on the finances, but more importantly, to the culture of the whole council, who takes ruthless financial efficiency very, very seriously. Okay, I hope that answers your questions. Is there anything else anyone wants to say? Oh, you can. You certainly can.
I'd like to make it quite clear what I would say, because I think, with the greatest respect, Councillor Rees, and I have a great deal of respect for you, you had slightly misunderstood what I've said. I am not attacking you or your performance or your scrutiny of the finances. Can I make that quite clear? So when I'm making criticism about scrutiny and the scrutiny packs, it is not aimed about the finance, because I do think, and I said it before, that we have made a great improvement, the council has, and it is much more open, and we are, or you are, with getting on top of it. And that is something to be praised. And I've not said anything differently. So can we get that quite clear, that there's not, where I am raising my concerns, and it is not again, when we do the finance, and it's again, not against Councillor Ray, because she always gives me a very straight answer. And I'm not, it is the other part of the pack where I get about 3 minutes to ask a question. That's it. Not when I'm dealing with Councillor Rees, not with Councillor Ube, but if it's for officers and things, I don't feel that I am able to scrutinise as strongly as I would like to. Does that make it clear what I'm saying now?
In that case, I will talk to you after the meeting, outside of this meeting, and thank you for that. Can I just call in Councillor Ume?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Alford. Look, I think the leader has explained the purpose and the value of policy and accountability committee meetings and scrutiny committee meetings. And obviously your comments and your reflections are always very welcome at the housing and homelessness scrutiny meetings that we have. And I would like to emphasise the chair does allow space for you and the rest of the committee to pose your questions, both to me and to officers. There's a lot of commitment and dedication that comes across, not just from the opposition, but also from committee members who are, to Councillor Alfonso's point, entitled to also provide that scrutiny. And I think it's very important, as you were mentioning before, that backbenchers, in addition to the opposition, can provide that scrutiny. The chair does allow that time for questions, for comments. I must say there are many policy and accountability meetings that have overrun by a significant amount of time because of the amount of rigour and debate and the questions and the challenge that's posed, not least by you, committee members, but also residents who are invited to join and pose their questions too. So there is robust discussion and conversation, but no doubt the chair will be listening and taking these comments further on board for future meetings. But there is that challenge. So I'm just challenging respectfully that there is that conversation. It's very robust and it's very much welcomed.
Thank you. And I'll take Councillor Alfonso's commitment she didn't make, but it was implicit that all your councillors will definitely turn up and all of them will definitely have read the papers and all of them will ask questions. And I give you our commitment. We will support them in doing that. Okay. In that case, thank you very much. And is that item noted and agreed? Okay. Let's move on then to item 6. As it comes after item 5, and that's the procurement strategy for the recommendation of public health nursing service and a new maternity in the community service. Can I move on to you, Councillor Sanderson?
Thank you very much. This report is seeking Cabinet approval to procure redesign 0 to 19 or 25 public health nursing services and a new maternity in the community service from January 2027. These are statutory services and cover health visiting, school nursing and maternity outreach, and are vital for early intervention and reducing health inequalities. The current contract ends in December 2026 and no longer meets local need, so the proposed model splits the service into 3 separate areas, improve flexibility, encourage innovation, and address workforce challenges and meet the needs of residents.
Good. Right. Any questions on that? No, I thought there was going to be a question there, Rowan. Okay. No. All right. Is that item agreed? Thank you. Next item, number 7, procurement of Hammersmith and Fulham sexual health e-service offer.
Also me, from maternity to sexual health. So this report is seeking approval to continue participating in Pan London online sexual health and contraceptive service, shl.uk, led by City of London Corporation. New contract set to begin in August 2026 and will run for 5 years with options to extend. And it provides free confidential STI testing, HIV care and contraception for residents aged 16 plus and is incredibly widely used, particularly by young people and those in deprived areas.
Any questions? Any questions from the opposition? All right, is that item agreed? Item number 8, please. And that's Councillor Umey.
Thank you, Leader. So this report talks about the family housing strategy, which basically sets out the council's plan to increase the supply of family homes through short, medium and long-term interventions. For example, by updating planning policy, making better use of existing homes and delivering or acquiring new housing. It's vital not only for meeting housing needs, but also for sustaining school enrolment, supporting local services and ensuring that the borough remains a place where families can grow and thrive.
Thank you. Any questions from Cabinet? Opposition?
On it, I think it's, for the most part, a very good, it is absolutely essential that we do have family housing. So it's just one of the sort of paragraphs that was used. And I've raised this before, and Councillor Rees always, I'm afraid it's aimed at Councillor Rees this time, not at, is that we're not going, the council is not going to go mad pushing up the housing prices and overbuying, like I've talked about in the past, of just going mad at buying houses. I hope we're going to be able to develop them in another way through Section 106s and everything else, rather than becoming a sort of buying too many houses.
Look, sorry, Councillor May.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you for the question. I think the really important thing here is we address the overwhelming demand and need for family housing. Nearly a third of households that are on the housing register require a house that's 3 bedrooms or more. It's nearly 900 people. This is a significant number, so we need to take action. And this is why this strategy outlines 7 different points that we will prioritise over the short, medium and longer term in order to do that by any means necessary. You must know that there's a housing crisis which has been fuelled by more than a decade worth of austerity measures and cuts and a lack of investment in social housing in every which possible way from a national perspective. So I think it's vital that we as a local authority step up and figure out ways and have developed this strategy to make sure that we are ensuring there is a greater supply of family housing to meet the demand that's completely overwhelming in this borough.
Thanks very much. Okay.
I mean, I do think it is essential that, and I'm not quite sure what the right word is, so I may not be using the correct word, is that we do market things like sheltered housing, that we get people to downsize, that they realise the advantages of being in shelter. As you know, I've got a passion about sheltered housing, but I don't think it's shown what an advantage and how good it can be for people if they are in larger properties and then their families have left, that they can downsize. I don't think we make it attractive enough. And I think we've got to, if I may suggest, that we make it an attractive option.
Leader, if I may?
Yep.
Well, thank you. I mean, in terms of the attractiveness of the offer of downsizing, this local authority is one of the most attractive offers across all London boroughs. And as you will have seen in the strategy, it's highlighted as one of the points that we need to make sure we're maximising the use of our council homes through encouraging downsizing, but notwithstanding, understanding that we need to meet people where they're at the same time. Individuals are encouraged. We also need to ensure that the property they move into meets their needs as well. So you must appreciate there are challenges on that front. But as the strategy highlights, we'll be doing everything possible to maximise the homes that we have in every which way. Thank you.
Councillor Ree.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I wanted to completely agree with all of that, and with Councillor Alford's point that this is something that's hugely important and hugely welcome as well. And then just to reassure you, I know you've mentioned this before when we had the housing company report. I tend to see it as my job to try and make sure the council doesn't do mad things when we're buying anything at all. So I think particularly when it comes to something as expensive as housing. So no, you've got my commitment on that. Thank you very much.
Look, you did say, Councillor Alford, you want to make sure the council doesn't go mad and buy a load of properties. And I would just, if you don't mind, pick that sentence apart a little bit. So first of all, I'd refer you to item number 5. Our independent assessment said we're really very good at public finances, far from gone mad. But then I'd take you back to this item and say, look, the fundamental problem is there is a housing crisis in the UK. There are people growing up in temporary accommodation, and the long-term effects on society of that, of these children, are terrible, but not least the long-term effects on the children are terrible. There has been the wrong political philosophy, I think, on housing, the importance of social housing as a part it plays within the housing economy. And that's led to huge falls in the amount of social housing. In a place like London, you're continuously batting away developers who want to build flats for overseas investors. We've done a lot to stop that in Hammersmith and Fulham, but at one point that was the council's policy. So, you know, before we got into office. So, you know, we're not certainly anything other than financially prudent when it comes to anything we do. You have to be in these times. But at the same time, we recognize the biggest thing that's going to make a difference to families is a good, safe, secure home. And that's why we will take any measure. It takes a long time to build a property. It's quicker to buy one. And that's what we're sort of setting out to do. We're also trying to incentivize sheltered housing. We're also incentivizing people downsizing their housing and all sorts of other measures. But the problem is so huge, no matter what scale, what we do, you will know we're building more affordable houses than almost anyone per square kilometre. And that's quite a feat. And we've done that because we came to such a robust approach in winning Section 106 and SIL. But it still leaves a problem unaddressed for many people, and that's something that we're trying to tackle. And I would say, and I'm sorry to be far too political about this, the new government has hit the ground running on this issue, and we do think that will be a sea change. And if they're in long enough, then we'll see a big change over the coming decade. Okay, is that item agreed? Thanks very much. Emergency Planning and Business Continuity Report, item number 9.
Hi, Leader. This report talks about the emergency planning and business continuity that the council has under its responsibilities under the Civil Contingency Act 2004 to plan and respond to emergencies and to have business continuity arrangements in place to reduce the risk of service disruption. The report provides an overview of activity over the previous 18 months and the priorities for the remainder of 2025 to 2026. Our emergency plans are clear and well established, and they're talked about in the report. And we've established a category of established in 10 categories in the work that we do. So the Cabinet is asked to note the report and its findings.
Thanks very much. Any questions of the opposition? Thank you very much. Is that item agreed? Item 10, Parks Improvement Programme. Councillor Chevaux-Edier.
Thank you, Leader. If I could preface my introduction to the report on this most holy of days by wishing everyone a très bonne fête nationale, as well as to acknowledge the fact that there wouldn't be any celebration without the generosity of the people of Hammersmith and Fulham, who hosted the Free French in July 1940, as well as the planning of the Normandy landings, leading to the unavoidable liberation of Europe. So on behalf of the nation, thankful, thank you. You have before you the Parks Improvement Programme, which is an initiative aimed at enhancing our 54 parks and green spaces. It proposes over the next 2 years to invest 1.1 million to transform our parks into more beautiful, accessible and safe environments. Key improvements include impactful planting to improve the aesthetics and biodiversity of our parks, to upgrade entrance and wayfinding signs to improve navigations, and improve pathways to ensure better accessibility for everyone. Additionally, we will replace and upgrade lighting columns to enhance safety, refurbish key statues, memorials and sculptures to preserve our history and our heritage. Condition surveys will be conducted on boundary walls and fencing with necessary repairs prioritised. Finally, we will introduce dual-use recycling bins to promote environmental responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the Cabinet? Councillor Harcourt.
Not a question, but more a comment. I just really want to emphasise the importance of this report and the importance of our parks. You know, we're in our third heat wave now, and the green spaces, the open spaces are so important for people. It's cleaner air, it's shade and such like provided by the trees. They may not be quite as green as they would normally be, given the dry weather as well, but they're absolutely essential at the moment, and the better that we can make them, they become more attractive. So great. Thanks very much for that report.
Thank you.
It is a slightly odd question, but nothing is mentioned about our cemeteries. Are the works planned for our cemeteries? Is that going to be a separate report? Because they are very important for.
Councillor Chevauque-Vidier.
Thank you very much, Chair. First of all, to acknowledge the comments made by the previous councillor that yes, our green spaces and parks are very important for us in the borough. Many of us don't have parks, balconies, or gardens there where people socialise, meet each other, discuss, including scrutinise us. So thankful for your comments. On the question, yes, the 4 cemeteries in the borough included in the programme will be looked at on the same footing as the parks and other green spaces.
Because, and I know you will all give a wry smile, but as the chairman of the Mortlake Crematorium Board, I have raised, and I have raised it with the chief executive, concerns about Mortlake and North Sheen cemeteries, and regretfully, I have to say, our neglect of them. So I hope that you'll be looking at them to make sure that they come up to a standard that we can really be proud of, as we are with our crematorium.
Yes, we are, and thank you for reminding me of a former councillor and alderman Cartwright, who I had many conversations with him about the Mortlake Crematorium Board, and I appreciate you and him sat valiantly throughout those boards for many years. So, thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you. And I'll join Councillor Chevauque-Vidier in wishing our entire French community here in Hammersmith and Fulham a very happy Bastille Day. Thank you for your comprehensive report. I'm glad to see parks are finally getting overdue investment, particularly in the area of lighting. In my ward, for example, Ilbrook Commons lighting has needed an upgrade in a very, very long time. I note the playgrounds are getting a separate report. Is there any indicative funding for that yet? Do you know how much you're likely to invest when that is reported on?
We're looking at that, but firstly, what I would say is, again, I come back to report number 5. You know, I remember, one of the first lessons that came from New York City in the 1970s was that you can't do anything if you don't have robust finances. So the reason this report is here now is because we've stripped out a record £138 million of Wasteful Council spending, but we've also got a record amount of Section 106 and SIL money. And as we often say to people when we're negotiating with them, we will put this money to very good use for you when we're talking to developers. And this is one of the things that you see here now. So there has been a record investment already to date over the last 10 years in our parks, which is why you see many of the parks looking better than they've ever been before, and we have more green flags than we've ever had before. But just because we're great at one moment doesn't mean you are 2-3 years later. And so we have a big program of continuous improvement, and that's what the report you see before you. There'll be a second report looking at play equipment, and that's because what we're doing is applying the latest sociological data to what is the right type of play equipment for children. We want to make sure we have some of the best play equipment around. Those days, those early days for a parent when you have a small toddler, or for a toddler, they're the memories that form who you become. So making sure we have the right type of equipment is something that we are upgrading based on the latest ideas, and there will be a significant investment in that because we can do it, and we can do it for the reasons I said at the beginning of this summary. So yes, there will be a separate report on that.
Thank you, Chair. Just to answer some of the points, yes, Mortlake Cemetery is something I'm looking after. We've identified the leak in the church, and we've got a plan of action to fix it. If I can shamelessly plug my support of a campaign for a memorial for Jeanne de Rouen, the first woman to stand for elected office in France, at Margravine Cemetery, and the council is supporting it. So if you'd like to donate, please do. And finally, Ilbrook Common. I was with the Friends of Ilbrook Common on Saturday morning, so we'll be looking at those priorities with them to make sure that they're addressed.
Okay, is that report agreed? Thanks very much. That takes us to item number 11, the forward plan of key decisions. Go on in the classes. Is that item noted? Can I therefore finish? Wasn't here at the beginning, but I was fortunate enough to spend some time with Her Excellency Helen Duchamp the ambassador of France to the United Kingdom earlier on, and she gave an extremely moving speech where she did indeed reference the liberation of France and indeed all of Western Europe by Allied forces who landed on beaches, machine guns firing, bazookas attacking Allied ships, and yet with each grain of sand, with each step through France, they began to liberate what we now call free Western Europe, and which is now much of it in the EU. It is moving to see the President of France, who kindly visited us earlier this week, and to reaffirm not just an entente cordiale, but an entente amicale, as we strengthen our defence ties in the extremely difficult times. And I think I would say, therefore, given that we have our second largest group of people living in the Hammersmith and Fulham are French, first of all, how honoured we are that they chose our borough as their home, to recognise that this point in history is a time for Britain and France to once again stand shoulder to shoulder together in the defence of liberty, and to say to everyone who is French living in Hammersmith and Fulham, Happy Bastille and Vive la France. On that note, have a lovely summer.